Hi, this is Melanie Lakosovic. I'm the executive editor with Capital Region Independent Media. We publish the Ravenna News Herald, the Greenville Pioneer, and a series of community guidebooks. We're here today with candidate Richard Amedure, who is running for state senate in the 46th Assembly District. We also have with us Mark Vinciguerra, who is our president and company owner. And we would like to speak with Mr. Amedure about his candidacy. Hi, can you please tell us a little bit about your background?
Okay, my name's Rich Amedure. I grew up in Catskill, New York, down in the Leeds area. I actually went to a one-room schoolhouse in Leeds. People say you don't look old enough, but we didn't have centralized schools in Catskill till 72. But I grew up in Leeds, great growing up, went in the military, went to Columbia Green for a couple of years, went to Catskill High School, graduated there, Columbia Green for 2 years. I got in the union. My dad was a union carpenter, so I was a union carpenter, worked IBM, very busy, very great. It was a great job in the mid 80s till IBM closed that plant down. So I needed another plan, went in the military to get some college money to finish up my engineering degree. Went overseas for 2 years, great enlistment. I'm looking back, then it was pretty tough, but I was in the 1st Infantry Division, Big Red 1, went to jump school, got stationed in Europe, deployed to Africa, went to North Morocco. There was a little thing going on there that nobody really talks about much. And then when I got out, I was on the list for the state police. I had taken a state police test before I went in. And in '89, I entered the state police. I did that for 30 years. I was out in Greenville, was the main place I patrolled. Every time I got a choice to move somewhere, my wife's like, get over yourself. You're not going anywhere because the kids are still in high school here. So I stayed in Greenville 27 years. I was basically the community trooper in Greenville for some kids' whole growing up. So one woman called the state police 3 times over 20 years. She goes, are you the only trooper here? Because over the 20 years I've been calling the state police, you're the only one that's ever come. So, but I prided myself on that. I don't know if you remember, Chuck Piernick was a great trooper, started the Westerlo satellite, and he had the same sort of rapport with the community. It was about community policing, about service to your neighbors. And I think we did a good job. The Greenville community is still doing very well today. After I left Greenville, I was executive director at the Troopers PBA for 4 years. So I got to run 2 statewide elections with troopers as my constituents. And basically, you were service to them. Any problems they had come up in any part of their lives, medical, we had a surgeons group, we had a charity that we could help them out with, and different things. And then police problems, obviously. We saw this coming in the union. We saw this problems with qualified immunity coming and all these different things. And I made the decision when George Amedure retired in 2020. I made the decision very quickly. I heard he retired on January 31st. I retired February 4th. And so it was a quick turnaround. I had 31 years in the state police, though, so it was time. And state police is a different world. When you hit 60, they throw you out. So in mid 50s, you better start making your exit plan, or they will make it for you. So.
Okay. Now you brought up George Amedure, and I'm sure people are wondering, Amedure, is there a relationship?
Yeah, we're both from the same town in Italy. Our grandparents are from, our grandfathers are from Giosa Ionica, which is funny because up in Rotterdam, I've actually met many people from the small town. It's like being from Ravenna, even smaller, and Rotterdam, there's quite a few Giosa residents. Giosa Marino, as my grandmother was from, the bottom of the foot of Italy. It's the Calabria is the province. So.
Okay. What are some of the top issues that you see happening in the 46th district, and how would you try to address them?
Well, again, with my background, crime is the main issue. 31 years in the troopers, I always felt I had the tools. Did we have everything we wanted? No, we were always short of manpower. Cars were trouble, but we had the tools we needed. Once you were out in the community, you could effect an arrest. You could put bad guys, people that were dangerous to other people. You could actually put them in jail, and you could go home at the end of the day knowing that at least they were going to be secured for a little while. When this cashless bail and discovery reform started, we knew it was going to be a nightmare as in the union, and it's I tried to tell everybody last time that we were going to have problems with this. Everybody's like, oh, you're exaggerating, it's not going to be nearly as bad as you think it is. Well, 2 years on, it's worse. It's absolutely worse. New York City's a disaster. It's going back to the days of the early 90s, late 80s, when the crack epidemic, and things were very difficult down in New York City. So we've gone backwards. First time in history, we've actually gone backwards in safety in society. And I think it's all because of one party rule from New York City. They want to end qualified immunity for police officers, which is the most ridiculous thing. If a police officer effects an arrest and somebody gets injured in that arrest, the qualified immunity doctrine says that they will get protection of the Attorney General, barring that they did anything extreme and excessive. To me, that's ridiculous, because we don't write the laws. We enforce the laws that we're given. If qualified immunity is going to be lifted, it should be lifted from the politicians. If you make a law such as cashless bail that costs people their lives, you should be held accountable. The problem is nobody's holding them accountable right now. So crime is a huge issue. It's near and dear to my heart, and I hate to say it, but I just think that people are going to start taking matters in their own hands sooner or later, knowing the police can't do it. And that's not what we want. That's not where we want society to go, to people have to deal with their own issues. Another huge issue is the economy. I mean, go to Walmart during a pandemic. Okay, they can blame everything on everything they want, but supply issues, are a huge part of the factor. The big problem is you incentivize people to stay home and not go to work, and then they didn't want to go to work. And then with the policies that they've put in place of giving everybody money. My mother's a great example. She's a pensioner. She has my father's union pension and had Social Security. She goes, Rich, my pay was not cut at all, but they wrote me a check for $1,200. It's absolutely ridiculous. It was pandering. And that's what we can't have. We need government to work for you. We don't need you to be dependent on government. And that's the problem. The policies that I will put forth are policies that will help people help themselves. My son is in the military currently. He went to Ukraine, and he married a Ukrainian woman. He actually married here. Her parents were like, you're not married till you're married in our church at home. So we all went to Ukraine last November, right between Omicron and the invasion, and we managed to get the wedding in, a beautiful wedding ceremony. She's been in this country less than 3 years. Everything works for that woman. And I said, do you know why things work for you? Because you're the hardest working person I know. There's things that go wrong and things that are mistakes, but we work through it. We get out. She just had our first grandchild the other day, so we're very happy about that. We just had the christening over the weekend at the Ukrainian church up in Watervliet. So it's a very happy time in our lives, but I want my children to stay here. My daughter is a doctor of physical therapy from Sage. And the joke is my wife and I ate rice and beans for 7 years to put her through college, and she has very little debt. Now we're eating rice and beans because I live on a pension. So it's a different thing. We need to get this spending of the government under control. You cannot spend your way out of an inflationary period.
That actually leads into our next question, which is about the economy. Inflation is high, as you said, gas prices are high. How would you look to spur economic growth in the 46th district to put more money in people's pockets?
Right. Again, my plan is more of a self-motive. Get government out of the way. One of the huge issues we're talking about, and we do a lot of roundtables, is at farms. Kirsten Gillibrand the other day was complaining that farmers in New York, the margins are so tight. The best thing you could do for farmers in the state of New York right now is get the state of New York out of the farmers' pockets. They just lowered the wages, the number of hours that they have to pay overtime. So it's going down to 40 hours. I know many dairy farmers, but the one comes to mind. I'm very good at my job. He bought a technology company to work his milking machines. He says, I will not be in business with the government. And this is the policy. Last year, Michelle Hinchy, who has absolutely no clue about farming, she was claimed to be an upstate person, but she lived in the city for 10 years, is the chairman of the agriculture committee. Do you wonder why we have bad farm policy? She knows nothing about it. And then she allows these destructive farm policies. We were talking to a whole group around a roundtable of farmers, and they said in 10 years, we don't see dairy left in this state. You just can't do it. Fresh market, same thing. We are competing with Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut. New York is the biggest market in the country. Our farmers are facing a major disadvantage. If we would get New York State government off of their back and out of their way, our farmers will be successful. We have beautiful soils. We have everything we need. We have great water. I mean, this is the thing. Again, my son married a Ukrainian woman. We just managed to get her parents over here on refugee status, her parents and her cousin. They're having a drought in Ukraine. They still managed to get the potatoes. I don't know. He wouldn't come over here until he harvested his 60,000 pounds of potatoes in one field. So, but they're having drought because it's a kind of a dry country. The soils are beautiful. California produces a lot of our produce now, fresh produce. It's not going to be eternal. We know we're going into a drier period in California. Farming is going to move back to the Northeast because Northeast has the most consistent rainfall. Rainfall is huge. But it won't move back if we have policies of the state government that are absolutely devastating anybody to do the farm. We live on a small farm. Last year, I tested my soil. I was all set to buy my fertilizer last November. Guy said, not huge. I'm only doing 10, 15 acres of hay fields. So horse hay. My daughter has horses, so I do the hay. It was about $600-700. I wanted to wait because it was very wet last fall. I didn't want to rot up my field. So I waited till this spring. The prices tripled. Now, none of my expenses went down. Everything went up. Diesel doubled, at least, if not more. Now it's on the way back up again. It's over $6 a gallon. I know a couple of farms that use hundreds of thousands of gallons of diesel a year. Now, again, I know I'm not running against Michelle Henchy, but her plan with this Green New Deal was to add a 50 cent a gallon tax to fuel. Oh, it won't be that bad. Well, if you're using hundreds of thousands of gallons a year, that's going to hurt. And that's going to stop you. And it hurts rural people. We live in Rensselaerville. We have 70 acres. I have to use 100 or so gallons, couple hundred gallons of diesel a year. But my wife, worse, has to drive to Albany every day. Now, when you start doing that, guess what you're doing? You're taking money out of rural people's pockets because my property is worth less if nobody can live out here and work in the city. So we need to stop this punishing rural people. And that's what this government has done because it's one party rule from New York City, and they have no understanding of how upstate works. We had a volunteer fireman trying to explain to a senator, a New York City senator, that he was a volunteer. She goes, I get it, but how do you get paid? You must get paid somehow. He's like, no, I don't get paid. I'm a volunteer. She didn't even understand the concept of a volunteer fireman. Somebody putting their own money and time out to improve their community. It didn't make sense to her. But every policy they've had has made it harder and harder to get volunteers. I was a volunteer fireman in the 80s. The course was 40 hours long, which was onerous back then for a 20-something-year-old kid. Now it's triple that. The prereqs before you can even walk in the firehouse and be useful is a 120-hour course. And they break it up over 2 phases. Some people do the first half and they're like, I'm not going to do the second half. Let's be reasonable. I get it. Training is the solution to a lot of problems. Excessive training is just causes fatigue. Again, I was a drill sergeant. My life has been about training. I joined the 98th Division in the mid-90s, and I became an engineer, combat engineer, drill sergeant at Hillside Avenue in Schenectady. Training troops they taught us every phase of it. From the phases of education, from unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know, to conscious competence. You know how to do what you know how to do. And the problem is we have a government right now made up of unconscious, incompetent people. They don't know the things that they're hurting, and they're destroying the upstate way of life.
Okay, well, we do have areas of the county, the district, that don't have broadband access. Obviously, that's become a huge necessity these days, and there are large pockets of the 46th district that don't have it still. What would you do to make that happen?
I was one of them. This farm has been here since the revolutionary times. We've only had power for the last 70 years. The first 150, we had no power. Up until last summer, I had no internet connection. Everybody says, oh, you don't have cable TV? Cable TV, I'm lucky I have electricity where I live. We had electric and phone, and that was it. And that happened in the rural electrification programs back then. I don't know if you know this. I was a planning board chairman in Rensselaerville too. I was on the planning board for 15 years. I was chairman for 5. We assisted companies that came in. Verizon came in with a very good project that they wanted to do. They actually did the engineering. They put a tower on a lower hill around here, and they came in. Everything worked beautifully. We assisted them. The whole process was 3 months, soup to nuts, and it was done. because it was the right project, the right time. The Institute, it was actually on the Rensselaerville Institute property, and they had put them through the ringer. They made them change their camouflage pattern. Now it just looks like a big cedar tree in the middle of a bunch of red pines. It's actually it's a very nicely camouflaged tower. We had another tower up on Edwards Hill that the police needed. And we had people that were dead set against it. But knowing we had major dead spots for not only broadband, but for police radio, we had people with life and death situations out on 145 out in the county line that could not reach anybody. So it was up to their own wits to get themselves out of it. So we managed to get that through. I kept a public hearing open 3 months, so I got everybody's input into it. We had a fair vote of the 7-member planning board, and we passed it. This is what happens. The Republicans, when they ran the Senate in the mid-teens, they approved $1 billion for infrastructure improvement, for broadband improvement. The first thing the Dems did when they took over power was to tax that. 25% tax on all of that. So what did they do? They took your buying power of $1 billion and made it $750 million because everything you did was going to be taxed. They also put a tax on state highways. The reason we didn't have it, after I approved that project 3 years ago and it only got done last summer. The reason was they couldn't get the state right away to let them use their broadband up 145 and some of the state roads they needed. So they had to find alternate routes through the woods to get their broadband signal up here, which is insane. Again, this is what I'm saying. Incompetent people are causing more problems. If we get out of these people's way, we vet these people. They're in business to make money. If we vet them and we give them a set of criteria, let's let them do their job. Don't tell them how to do their job. And it was the other thing. We have a solar panel moratorium, not a moratorium anymore. We had a moratorium until we wrote the right letter. We asked that vendors who come to our town for a major over 10 kilowatt solar project bond it. So when it's all said and done, 20 years, it's gone. They have the money to get rid of it instead of leaving it in the fields like they would. They didn't do that in some neighboring towns. So guess how many solar panels we got compared to neighboring towns? We have none, and they have all the solar panels down there where the actors don't have to put up these bonds. Again, some farmers I know have to use their prime farmland soils, which New York State was the geologic leader from the 1850s. Every bit of dirt in New York has been qualified, quantified, measured. Most of these solar panels are going on prime farmland soils, which is a horrible thing because where are they? They're down in the valleys where all the power companies. A friend of mine is losing 300 acres and he has to do it. He says, there's no other way that I can make ends meet unless I do this. He goes, I don't want to be in partnership. I don't want to do this. And everybody's mad at him. But he's like, here's the options. I go out of business and we have no milk. We're not milking anymore. I lose all of the jobs and all the other infrastructure that goes along with that. Or I put in these panels, these solar panels. And unfortunately, it's a terrible choice that he's being made with. But again, this is when the government forces business owners into choices that they don't want.
Okay, we are starting to run a little bit low on time. Mr. Vinciguerra had to go off video, but he is still here with us.
I told you I could talk, so.
It's all good. Thank you, though.
An issue that is on the national stage right now is abortion and reproductive rights.
Right.
Can you just hear where you stand on that issue?
Right. I was with Lee Zeldin the other day when they said, are you going to do this and that and end abortion in New York State? And he says, maybe you don't understand how the state works. The assembly is 150 seats, over 100 of them are in Democrat hands, which that's never going to change. He says, I will not use any executive action. Abortion is not being threatened in the state of New York. The Republicans, when they ran the Senate, they had the Women's Bill of Rights. It was 10 points. They agreed with 9 of the points. The 10th point was third trimester abortions, late term abortions. And the Republicans said, look, we'll give you first and second trimester abortions, life of the mother, all that stuff. The Democrats wouldn't agree to it. The Democrats wanted third term abortion, and that was their sticking point. New York State has the most liberal abortion laws in the country, other than California and other like that. 15 weeks is the limit in most other countries in the world. Most of Europe is 15 weeks where they limit abortions after that. I told you I had a granddaughter, 17 days ago. Well, 17 days and an hour ago, she could have been aborted. And she's a perfect little healthy baby. Is that what the people in New York want? And I don't think so. I think if we have an honest poll people say, do you support third trimester abortions? I think far majorities of New York State don't even agree with that. Is there a point we can reach in the middle that is agreeable to people? Yes. The problem is the way our system is set up. It's an adversarial system. Again, when I was planning board chairman, if I started at a reasonable position, if I started in the middle somewhere where I wanted to be, and somebody else started at an extreme position, the ending point was always toward the extreme position because I started at the extreme position. So what happens in our adversarial system is that you have to start at one end of the spectrum. The other people start at the other end of the spectrum. And that goes for criminal justice, that goes for civil court, that goes for all these different things. So a neutral arbiter or a consensus of opinion can end up in the middle. And that's what we need to do. We need to get something that we can all live with. Because right now, this is a 50-year argument that's not solved. And it's horrible. I wouldn't come into somebody's business. I wouldn't come in and tell you how to do your newspaper business, right? And I wouldn't do that as a legislator. I wouldn't expect me to tell you how to do things. Again, we've gone over how just incompetent they are at other business. I don't think somebody else has I'm a little libertarian on this. I mean, people have a right to choose their own bodies. However, my son got thrown out of the military for not getting a vaccine. Well, he's not thrown out. He's on Z status. Nobody knows what that means because the military doesn't know what to do with it. They just found that the vaccine ban in New York City is unconstitutional for the police officers. So listen, we need to get a consensus. This is my problem. They jam things down our throat without doing a consensus of opinion.
Okay, excuse me. We would just like to wrap things up, and I just wanted to give you a chance to give your final message to the voters, what you would like to tell them. Okay.
I'm very excited to run for Senate. I believe in what I do. I have many opinions. We need an hour to really get any. We haven't even scratched the surface of what I wanted to talk about. But we need to start getting government to work for the people again. And sometimes that means get out of the way. It doesn't always mean free money. The problem is my opponent believes free money is the solution to every problem. Give people more money, give people more money. I don't believe in that. I married the most frugal woman I knew in high school, and it worked out very well for us. And we're financially sound now, we're comfortable, but we did it by being on the reasonable side of spending. And the government right now is out of control. The spending is so out of control, it's not even funny. I mean, they gave, if you heard the other day, they gave Kathy Hochul over $900 million to spend as she will in this last budget. We went from a $172 billion budget 2 years ago to a $220 billion budget under 2 years. That's more than Texas and Florida combined, and they both have more people than us. Let's get competent people in government. Neil Breslin, I've been trying to get a debate with him. He won't come out. He hasn't been out. He's doing a Joe Biden strategy. He's hidden. He's 80 years old this year. God bless him. Time to retire, Neil. Let somebody do the job that physically and mentally able to handle the job. He doesn't come out. I talked to his campaign director directly. I gave her my personal cell phone. Call me anytime. Let's do a debate. I haven't heard from him. He's sending out smear campaigns. I would love to see you guys. I'm an extremist. They call me. Neil Breslin's campaign. My wife gets upset at these things. I'm an anti-gun radical nut. Listen, I've been in public service my whole life. I know how to do public service. Helping people is what I've done. I'm in a very good position in life. My wife, my kids, and I are all in a very good position. I want to do what I can to help the people excel and live up to their best potential.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us, Mr. Amedure. That was Richard Amedure. He is running for Republican State Senate in the 46th District. And thank you for joining us. And everyone, go out on Election Day, November 8th, wherever you stand on the issues, go out and vote and make your voice heard. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.